Something happened to me and my father didn't protect me. I, 24F, no longer want a relationship with my biological father, and this is something that maybe I shouldn't come here for advice about, but this is something that literally stops all thought, all breath in my being. I feel lost and guilty. This is going to be a long-ass post. I apologize ahead of time if there's TMI or it doesn't make sense. Leader at the end. I was born to two parents that divorced maybe a year after I was born. I was always living with my mom and would spend weekends with my father growing up. He's a good man at heart. Was never really the parent to raise his voice at me. Very typical fun dad, but he wasn't a great parent. I've spent maybe 4 birthdays with him my whole life. He'd miss weekends for a volleyball game and other small failings as a parent. I was a very quiet child and didn't allow anyone to see my hurt, even when he'd allow his family to talk poorly about my mother and put me, a minor, in an uncomfortable situation. I loved my father. It didn't matter how many times he disappointed me. Like any other child, I feel it's important to note that most of my father's family members who weren't born in the US don't speak English or speak it fluently, as they all come from a Spanish-speaking country. I mention this to say that this was another layer of lacking support or connectivity, which was consistent throughout my life. I'd be at parties where people would call me a gringa, talk about my mother in Spanish for what I understood, and I'd just be in a corner waiting for someone to take interest in me as my father's daughter. Safe to say I didn't know most of my relatives, as my father had failed to teach me Spanish growing up and would later accuse me of not wanting to fit in. Fast forward to 2016, the literal day after my 16th birthday. This being the quarter birthday spent together and the last. I was molested by my second cousin, my father's cousin, who was 23 at the time. It started out like a beautiful day. I'm a summer baby, so my family wanted to throw a BBQ for me as a belated birthday party, as well as gather family. We had gotten there, and there's music, food, laughter, etc., even though a good deal of my relatives couldn't speak to me, or I didn't even know how we were related. It was the first time I actually felt loved and welcomed by my entire family. At some point, the cousin asks me if I want to go smoke weed around the block. All the other adults were smoking hookah and IOFC was a minor, so wanting to be cool, I said yes. Made generally conversation, nothing out of the ordinary or inappropriate. Hardly even took enough hits to be high before my father came and fetched me. Looking back, he definitely had a look and tone to him when he asked me what we were doing or talking about. I just can't discern if it was him implying that I or the cousin was inappropriate. But he didn't make a thing of it and just said he'd let the weed slide this time.